This is HBR News number 501. Tim Walz on Speaking Men's Language, the end of white guilt, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of the absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. My name is Brian, your host here on HBR News, and I'm joined by, as always, my lovely co-hosts, Dr. Rana McCam and Hannah Wallen. On today's HBR News, we're going to be discussing the viral video that has everybody talking and everybody's got a take on it, including, like, Gibson Go. The UK is planning the UK plans to test transgender children for autism. Tim Walz is the man whisperer and more, so stick around, it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So I saw this from The Guardian, because The Guardian's always good for content for our patrons. And for our patrons. Like, it's basically just entertainment at this point. It's like, you know, my mom, she used to buy the Weekly World News newspaper, and nothing in it was true. You know, I mean, maybe Bat Boy and the Face on Mars, but like most of the stuff in there isn't real, but it was entertaining to read anyway. And sometimes my mom would be like, some of this stuff is true. Like she wanted it to be true. She wanted to live in a world of mystery and strangeness. But yeah, so The Guardian is...
I'm reading this headline and I'm trying to digest it.
Yeah. So this is the headline.
And fertile.
Yes. This is the headline from The Guardian. Now comes the womanosphere. The anti-feminist media telling women to be thin, fertile, and Republican. A crop of conservative personalities such as Brett Cooper and Candace Owens and the outlets like Evie are convincing young women of a gender essentialist worldview. Well, this means
does that mean that feminists tell women to be fat, childless, and Democrat?
Yes.
I'm wondering how the womanosphere is different from the feminist sphere. And I'm glad they can admit that feminism is not women. Because it's not. That's
true.
For the longest time, people have been equating feminism with women. Like anything that's good for women is necessarily feminism. But apparently, this Guardian cunt is admitting that no, feminism is this different thing that wants women to be fat, infertile, and
Democrat.
Like how that even makes sense in the UK. The Guardian is a UK publication, right? It's not.
Yeah,
you all are aware of it, but you don't have it in America, right?
Yeah, no, we only have it on the web. I don't even know if it exists in like a paper, physical media format.
Imagine MSNBC times a million. Imagine the New York Times and times a million. That's the Guardian. It's not even. This is why we leave it for the after show, folks, because it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, so we're gonna go through it and look at that. So in order for you to be a part of whatever insane, like, you know, Ark of the Covenant style opening of this, if you want to be present, to have your faces melted by the evil spirits that live within this website, you have to become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and /subscribe. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, and we'll let you watch all the additional content as well as hang out with our lovely patrons and community, which are always up to new things. I think Allison's got like a new series of live streams she's going to try and host herself, coming out pretty soon. So, you know, lots of stuff there for content. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that our content has been permanently yeeted from the internet, then go to badgerfeed.com, that's badgerfeed.com, or honeybadgerradio.com to find where all of our archived content lives. So, with all that out of the way, let us get into today's stories. All right. The UK's National Health Service, the NHS, has introduced new guidelines to screen all children referred to gender clinics for autism and other neurodevelopmental conditions such as ADHD. following recommendations from the Cass Review by pediatrician Baroness Cass. Is that a real name? Baroness Cass? That sounds like a G.I. Joe villain. The review highlighted a significant overlap between gender dysphoria and mental health issues. No shit. Noting that transgender individuals are 3 to 6 times more likely to be autistic, with many cases of autism going undiagnosed, particularly in adolescent girls. The new policy aims to provide a more holistic approach to care by ensuring that children receive appropriate assessments and support for co-occurring conditions while awaiting gender clinic services, with referrals to specialized neurodevelopmental or mental health services as needed. The guidance marks a shift away from the previous gender-affirming model, which often prioritized transgender identity affirmation, towards a broader focus on overall child and adolescent health. Imagine putting kids first, incorporating psychoeducation and psychotherapy. NHS mental health teams are encouraged to continue supporting children on gender clinic waiting lists, working alongside local health networks and GPs. This change reflects a growing recognition of the complexity of gender dysphoria in young people, aiming to address underlying mental health and neurodevelopmental challenges to better inform their care and treatment pathways.
It's times like this I wish I was able to crack my knuckles just for the sound effect. You'll have to imagine me doing
crack.
When a parent comes to a doctor saying my child is transgender, and I do mean parent singular, and I do of course mean mother, the doctor should be allowed to respond, no, they're not transgender. And that ought to be the end of that sentence and the end of the diagnosis and the end of the visit with a yo ho ho and a thank you, come again. And then I have a long line of sick people out there who genuinely need my help. Bye-bye. They shouldn't have to pussyfoot around it by saying, maybe your child isn't transgender. There's really no two ways about it. Your cat isn't vegan either, etc. And they sure as hell shouldn't have to add another caveat in the form of maybe your child isn't transgender, maybe they're just autistic. Because at that point, you're just fighting one widespread overdiagnosis with another widespread overdiagnosis. If that's what it takes, well, it's still not okay. As a matter of fact, it's a sorry state of affairs. To be honest, when a parent comes to a doctor saying, I think my child is autistic, the doctor ought to be allowed to respond, maybe they're not autistic, maybe they're just quiet, maybe they just like playing with Lego bricks because Lego bricks are fun. Maybe your child doesn't understand this labyrinthine rat's nest of self-contradictory social cues because the whole thing is a bunch of bullshit that was just made up to torture people. That, of course, should come with a maybe, because there is indeed such a thing as an autistic child. Maybe there really are a lot more of them nowadays for whatever reason, or maybe it's just being massively overdiagnosed because the world is being run by narcissists who think anyone who isn't a narcissist is weird, to the point of the neurological opposite of narcissism, which would be autism. But at least there is, such a thing as an autistic child. There is no such thing as a transgender child. But no ifs, no buts. You're a fucking crazy person. Stop it. It's funny how people look back on sitcoms as late as the 90s, like Friends or whatever. Whenever there's a drag queen character and any other character in the sitcom is slightly uncomfortable with it or makes some kind of joke about it, or the show fails to portray the drag queen as anything but a flawless angel who is entirely in the right, everyone in the current day looks at that and goes, man, that didn't age well, did it? didn't it? Well, you know what I think doesn't age well? Trans people. They kill themselves. Sorry, that was a joke, but I couldn't resist. But seriously, when the trans movement has reached the point where children are being coerced into it by their schools, by their teachers, and by the media, and in response, medical professionals aren't even allowed to offer a second opinion on the matter. They just have to fast track them into the transition program, no questions asked. I would say it's the trans movement that hasn't aged well. I don't think those milquetoast 90s sitcoms went too far. I think the trans movement has gone too far when it's, fucking up children. Not to mention fucking children. What's still up for debate, as far as I'm concerned, is when was the point where it hadn't gone too far? At what age is it suitable to diagnose someone with being the opposite sex? Well, this story has given me an idea. If you're going to test little girls for autism before you diagnose them as transgender, why don't you test grown men for narcissism before you diagnose them as transgender? Eh? And the obvious answer is, well, because we don't test people for narcissism anymore. There's no such test. Like I said, the narcissists are in charge now. They've taken over the world, or at least the Western world. And now narcissism is normal. It's the center of the dial. Anyone below the dial must be autistic, and anyone above the dial is just fabulous. Anyone below the dial must be male. Anyone above it must be female. And everyone is constantly being encouraged to rise above the dial and is constantly being demonized for falling below it. And no, it's not just feminists who are doing this. Even fervent anti-feminists will label anything they don't like as autistic, while completely ignoring the obvious cluster B nightmare that is all around them. And yes, I have something of a storied history of seriously pissing people off by saying, hey, maybe everything you don't like is not necessarily autism, an emotional child's guide to online discourse. I've spent 10 years dying on this hill, folks, and I'm still alive. So beat that dead horse, I will. Speaking of emotional children and speaking of narcissists, when a parent comes to a doctor saying, my child is transgender, maybe instead of testing the child for autism, you should test the parent for narcissism. That makes a hell of a lot more sense to me. Then again, I'm not a real doctor. None of this is medical advice and so on and so forth. Sorry.
So you're saying it's not an ought, it's an is. No.
It's an ought from an ism.
Incoming rant. Y'all remember when gender dysphoria was understood to be a mental disorder in and of itself? Do you remember that? Because the older versions of the DSM, remember, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, when I took abnormal psychology in the 90s, it was recognized as a mental health condition, a mental disorder. And it was recognized that being in that condition, right, causes people pain the same way that being anorexic causes people pain, the same way that Alice in Wonderland syndrome, look that one up, it sounds like a lot of fun, causes people pain, emotional pain, because your perception is not in line with your physical reality, right? It is the same kind of pain that people go through with disorders that cause auditory and visual hallucinations, where their reality doesn't compute. And then they have difficulty interacting with other people, or they have difficulty interacting with the world around them, or it makes you paranoid. And it is a painful disorder to have. It's also very rare. Very rare. And as far as the autism thing, I think the reason that they're now testing kids when their parents bring them in and say, my kid is trans, they're testing kids for autism is because autistic girls in particular have been targeted for this. Autistic girls have a tendency to be less stereotypically feminine. We get interested in taking things apart and putting them back together, and doing things that usually you would see little boys doing, taking big risks on the playground, climbing things that we're not supposed to climb, like power line poles, utility poles and stuff. Just all of the things that you usually have to watch out for in your son if you don't want him to die before he's 20, that you usually don't necessarily have to stop your girl from doing because she's busy playing with her dolls and imitating mommy. And so, of course, when you get somebody who is narcissistic, whether it's the mom, the school teacher, some club teacher or leader, whoever, and it's like, I'm going to be the discoverer of this girl's problem and the solution, and everybody's going to think I'm great for it. They settle on, obviously, trans, even though the girl has, to that point, experienced no dysphoria. She's not in pain. She's not suffering. She's not wishing she were a boy. She's not upset about sometimes being put in a dress instead of blue jeans. And there's a lot of us that had to be told, well, you can't play football in a dress. You can't climb trees in a dress. You have to wear something else when we were growing up, right? Because we didn't really differentiate. We didn't care. And there's a huge difference between not caring about the difference between how boys act and how girls act when you're growing up and thinking you are the opposite sex. So when parents bring their kids in and say, my child is trans, especially mothers, because mothers more often are individuals who have this problem, should be testing the parent and any other influence on that child who may or may not have convinced the child to experience this mental health condition that is painful, that the child didn't have until exposed to adult ideas about, well, if you don't fit the stereotype, you must have this mental disorder. Maybe they should be testing the adults for Munchausen's by proxy, because that's what it is when you inflict symptoms of an illness your child does not have on your child for attention. And yeah, most people with it would probably also get diagnosed if they were examined for it with narcissism. It is a narcissistic behavior. It is a attention-seeking behavior. To treat your child like a combination of purse puppy and Frankenstein's monster. And I'm not saying that people who are trans, who have transitioned, are Frankenstein's monsters. But when a parent experiments on their child for public display, that is treating your child as a Frankenstein's monster. You should be going to bat for your child, not using your child for attention. It is absolutely pathetic how many women need to hear that and how many of them will be offended by it. And it's time that fathers step in as a group, not just one guy suing one ex-wife, but as a demographic, as a voting bloc, and say, you know what, ladies? No, you are not allowed to do this. You do not have our permission, and we are collectively going to keep voting out politicians that allow for it and keep voting in politicians who will change the systems you are using to do this, to put roadblocks in your way and outlaw your behavior because it's out of control. And this is just one more area where female narcissism has resulted in widespread child abuse. And it's one of many. Many. This is no better than toddlers and tiaras or whatever it was back in the day that everybody was so outraged about, with little 3-year-olds parading around in bikinis so that they can get a little crown and a financial prize, and their moms can feel like they have the prettiest little 3-year-old around, and wearing fake boobs in the process, by the way. Right? Moms need to be checked on this. And the only people who can do it are fathers.
All right. Well, again, this is a step in the right direction. The NHS at least is starting to say, maybe we should, before we start cutting off genitals and castrating children, maybe we should look at their, if there are neurodevelopmental problems that we could address instead. But this doesn't discount anything that you guys have said. I'm just saying it is a step in the right direction. However,
yeah.
maybe one thing that is possible is that it only became an issue when it started affecting girls. So, because most trans people were male to female for a long time, and now that it appears that it might be affecting girls, suddenly everybody's like, uh-oh, we got to do something about this. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But again, I do think
thing to bear in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we Gen Xers were growing up, I just got called a tomboy. Nobody tried to tell me I was actually a boy, and nobody tried to tell me that not being stereotypically feminine meant that I had to think I was a boy, right? But boys who acted
feminine,
not stereotypically masculine, who had any interest in their physical appearance or any interest in, they got called gay, right? They didn't get told they were trans. They got called gay. And I think a lot of times, if you had somebody who was very emotional, very sensitive, very expressive about it, and liked things that were stereotypically feminine, even though the people who were best at them, like cooking and things like gardening and things like that, are usually men, not women. They got treated like it was some kind of a sin. And since they got excluded socially, and the gay and lesbian community accepted them, that was, I think, a big part of why the phenomenon affected more males than females. But even then, in the 80s and 90s, you barely ever met somebody who was trans.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe a drag queen, maybe a transvestite, like a person,
unless you were in
cross-dresser, a cross-dresser. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, it was really rare.
There's also an understood difference between a drag queen and somebody who is trans, right? Because a drag queen didn't identify all the time as female. A drag queen cosplayed being female for fun or profit or both, but somebody was trans identified as female if they were male, or male if they were female. And there was a stark difference, and if you confused the two, people got mad that were part of the community. So yeah, a lot has changed. And I think the thing that really broke the public in regard to this was, this used to be something people decided in adulthood. And then and they went with what they were going to decide because they were adults and they could make their own decisions, and it was up to them. And they were responsible for their decisions, and they faced the consequences of their decisions. And that's just the way things are, right? But suddenly it's being inflicted on children. And on top of that, there's an explosion of it. It's being taught in schools. It's targeted. And it's a huge change. And all of a sudden, there's also no difference between drag and trans, and gender identities exploded into like 150 different ones and all that. It went from being something that happens on rare occasions, and you deal with how the person decides to live their life on an individual basis with that individual person, to a society-wide phenomenon, and nobody's allowed to have any opinions on it. In other words, a psyop. And I don't think people bought it from the beginning, except for women who saw it as an opportunity to get attention.
Yep. All right, we're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I did get a couple of super chows, so I'm going to read those really quick. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any super chats as well. Sometimes they don't go through right away. All right. Meredith G gave us $5. Thank you, Meredith, and says, HBR News number 501. It seems to me, first we medicalize boys with ADHD medicine, and then the medication for autism for the boys. Then they went for the trans diagnosis, and it seems when they run out of boys, they need to move on to the girls. Yes, entirely possible and fair to say. Yeah, I mean, I remember when Tom Cruise was talking to some interviewer, and he basically was trying to warn him about these drugs and how they affect children, and everyone was like, this guy's crazy. And that was like way back in the day, I think, when one of the Mission Impossible movies came out, like one of the early ones. And now, look, I mean, I think that what he was trying to warn us about, I think that he wasn't wrong. And I think that, sometimes we probably should, when somebody says, don't listen to this person because they're crazy, maybe you should reconsider that. Okay, then I got another super chow from Zeranx, but he says, please read after the Womanosphere story. So I'm not going to read it, but I'm not reading the Womanosphere story until the patron show. So I don't know if you wanted me to read it on the show at some point, because I'm not reading that story on the show. That's the patron topic. So let me know if you want me to read this on stream now. I mean, like, just let me know when you hear this. So, all right, we're going to move on.
Just want to say one thing in response to the bit about medications.
Yeah.
You realize they still, after they've been using them on people for 30 years, they don't understand how SSRIs work.
Right.
And they don't know everything that they do to your brain.
Right. And I think like a quarter of young women are on something. Yes.
And they're prescribing them for increasingly frivolous reasons. And instead of this is an aspect, an outcrop of the accountability gap, right? When a man is depressed, back in the day when men were allowed to hang out with each other without female supervision and without female harassment for it, they could pull each other out of, if it was just the doldrums, if it was, here's the situation, I'm depressed over it, or if it was, I'm going through this thing, it's going to take this long to happen, whether it was a divorce or whether it was I'm grieving for some loss, I'm changing jobs or something like that. Men saw each other through that kind of thing, and they didn't use drugs to get through it. And they didn't kill themselves because they had a social support network that they were allowed to have, right? Women went straight to the doctor and said, give me a pill so I don't have to feel these feelings, instead of having some emotional intelligence and working through them. And learning to control the outcome by controlling their behavior and controlling what they're focusing on. And men were accountable for that, controlling what they're focusing on, and they still are, to such a degree that even when they do need help and they do need medication, they're treated like it's their fault. So this whole over-drugging situation, particularly with drugs that, since they don't really know what they're doing, should still be classified as experimental, that's female-driven. And it's been inflicted on the public by women. And by the way, your tap water is tainted with this shit. If you don't have a filter, that a reverse osmosis filter that gets as much of that out as humanly possible. You are drinking microdoses of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors and birth control pills.
Yeah. All right, so Xeranx did say I could read it on stream. So he gave us $5 and says, feminism isn't women, but unfortunately most women are feminists. When you take into account what Simone de Beauvoir said about women's choices and look at how women go through the motions like men, it's hard to separate women from feminism or vice versa. This is also greatly evident when you watch the following video featuring Faye Weldon, especially when she says feminism is good for young women, and then he included a link, this is on the Discord server, to a YouTube video from BBC Newsnight that is entitled Faye Weldon, What Her Generation of Feminists Got Wrong. I guess she's saying that this current generation gets it right. I don't know. These people are insane. And then it says, it's why I maintain feminism is primarily an anti-family ideology. If there was a feminism that was in any way positive, it would operate in trying to conserve the complementary relationship between men and women. However, it could. Maybe we end up with less technological innovation. It's why I maintain feminism is primarily an anti-family ideology. If there was a feminism that was in this, let me see, firewall. Let me turn off the firewall real quick. Yes, just do it. Okay. Let me see if that yeah, it looks like it's starting to come back on. I don't know, guys. I haven't done anything on my end at all. It's just like the bars.
This is what happened on Thursday.
Oh yeah, we're back.
Are we back? Good,
yeah,
good.
we're back. We're back. All
well,
right.
That part didn't happen on Thursday.
Oh,
we went
God.
down. OBS kicked us out of the stream, and I'm pretty sure it was OBS. It just quit talking to Restream, and then it didn't start back up again.
Yeah, I'm getting like a poor stream health, but it's catching up. It'll be fine. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry. You're back. Okay. It didn't. Yeah, weird, but thanks for. I'm watching the chat to make sure. I don't know, man. These things. I don't know, man. Maybe we're being attacked by the Chinese. I don't know. But okay. So Tim Walz. Let me get back to this. As part of the ill-fated 2024 effort to hold on to the White House, Kamala Harris's VP pick, Tim Walz explains what we all knew, the rationale behind his pick for the position. Speaking with the New York Post, Walz stated, quote, I could code talk to white guys watching football, fixing their truck, and put them at ease, end quote. A strategy which, according to the results of the election, did not seem to work the way Walz and fellow Dems wanted it to. Better luck in 2028, I guess. So...
Tim Walz is an alien, confirmed.
It's difficult to get this across without body language. To like that comedian who like expressed it with the body language that Tim Walz did. I mean, I suppose we'll assume for the sake of argument that what Tim Walz is saying is true. Everyone seems to have jumped on that assumption just because it's so memeably hilarious. But this could just be a classic case of a politician lying or a politician being delusional. I mean, someone along this chain of command was being starkly delusional. Maybe it was just Tim Walz. He's like, well, I'm here. I'm on the ticket next to a brown race-baiting clown being puppeteered by another brown race-baiting clown. And I'm an incompetent boob who pulls demented facial expressions and splutters hysterical gaffes all over the place and prances around on stage like the bastard love child of a fairy and a goblin. I have absolutely nothing going for me, but at least I'm a white man being thrust front and center by a party that openly despises white men. I can only conclude that I'm here so that Harris and Obama can pay lip service to the 100 million or so white men that they would rather completely ignore. And yes, Tim, that's actually, I'll give it to you. That's some sound logic. That does seem like a decision that would be made by a party that sees white men as an afterthought. a party that can't tell the difference between a competent white man and a bumbling, bug-eyed waste of space of a white man. But there are other possibilities. Maybe you were there because you were the Minnesota governor during the George Floyd debacle. Maybe it's not that you're a white man. Maybe it's that you proved yourself capable of allowing your state to be flooded with enough fentanyl to statistically guarantee the death of a black criminal, right when the Democrats needed the death of a black criminal. And you handled it with aplomb by further allowing your state to be burned to a crisp at the time, leading the nation and the Western world in a unified movement to burn everything to a crisp right when the Democrats needed it. Maybe you were picked, Tim, not despite your incompetence, but because of it. Because after all, one man's incompetence is another party's competence. The purpose of a system is what it does. You were picked, Tim, not because you do what is best for the American people, but because you do what is best for the Democrat Party, up to and including the complete dissolution and atomization of the American people. Pardon, especially white men. Because you were there because you represent exactly what the Democrats want in a white man. A useless, obedient, bobble-headed stooge who looks like the Lego man version of Joe Biden and acts like the Lego man version of Joe Biden. Maybe you're right, Tim, and maybe I'm right too. Maybe it's hard to tell when it comes to a party that sows nothing but unpredictable chaos. Maybe everybody's right. Maybe everybody's far right. And that's why you lost. And your legacy was doomed from the start. I enjoy what the history books will do with you, Tim Walz, if they do anything at all. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye. And so on and so forth.
So I just want to point out that what Walz said is the exact thing that somebody would say if they believed that everything about their public life was strictly performative. That nothing they said, nothing they did, nothing was real. Nothing meant anything. Nothing was, from their genuine personality. In fact, maybe they don't even have a genuine personality. Everything they do, everything they say, even everything they think is performative. It's all filling in the blanks in a bureaucratic paperwork type of life where everything has to be dictated by a political perspective and what is the prescribed norm of the people around them and the people in charge of them, right? The people who judge them. And that is why he didn't understand the level of tone deafness in what he said. Not just the tone deafness toward white men, right? Where, like, if we just talk right, if we just say the right things, they won't see through our shit, right? If we just say the right things, they won't know that we're lying to them and we're going to do a bunch of shit that's going to ultimately be a betrayal of them and be bad for their lives and everything. But he was also tone deaf in using the term code talk. Right? Because who were the code talkers? They weren't trying to communicate with people that didn't understand them. They were using the fact that foreigners wouldn't understand them to help prevent foreigners from figuring out our military strategies. They added an extra language layer to the secrets, that they were speaking over the radio, so that even if one code was broken, the fact that the language that it was being spoken in was not English as expected would make it impossible for anyone to translate, especially anyone in Japan or Germany, where they didn't have a lot of experience with Native American languages. And they actually did something good. I mean, they actually helped protect people. What he's talking about doing is tricking people into voting for someone who doesn't support or stand for them by lying to them and pretending to be something he's not and expecting them to not see through it. I mean, what a slap in the face
Mm-hmm.
for the men who won voting rights for their people by going into war zones to do this work with little to no protection of their own, having to rely on somebody to protect them who was told to kill them if they got captured. Huge risk that they took for benefits that last to this day. And it's just shameful, honestly. But it's typical of the Democrats, right? That kind of tone deafness. Oh yeah, if we just perform whiteness and we just perform masculinity after all of the shit we have pulled, white men won't see through it and they'll vote for us. Woohoo! They expected that to work. Why? Because they think you're as dumb as they are.
Or dumber.
Yep. You just got to keep proving you're not. These people will not go away until you have so many times proved that you're not dumber than they are, that they recognize they're never coming back to power. That's what has to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, I'm just glad that we live in a time now where people are, at least to some degree, savvy enough that they could figure these things out. This is why independent media, like ours, is important. Because if we were getting all of our information only from the legacy media, you would not hear this story. You would presume that Tim Walz was a man's man, coach and all that, and you would have fell for it, or potentially fell for it. If you weren't looking at the policies and the things that you care about. But the fact is that in general, politicians have not given any attention to men, especially leftist ones, because they tend to be more feminist. But I would say that across the board, generally politicians are not asking questions about men because they presume that men don't have anything to be concerned about. And the truth is that they do, especially boys. So this is going to be addressed. I think that that's starting to change. And I'm grateful for us having, this kind of media landscape where we can learn these things about the people that we have given power to. So I am hoping that Tim Walz will lose his power. We'll see how much the people of Minnesota will wake up to this. I mean, he basically, locked it down, allowed it to burn, allowed drugs in, and all of that, and he almost became our vice president. And I mean, it was a significant victory, but when you think about literally what his party was running on, which was just women's right to kill their babies, that's the only thing they had, is essentially fear-mongering about what the orange man might do to women. That was all they had, and it was still frighteningly close. Frighteningly close considering, right? So, but
well,
yeah,
I mean, they figured they'd have women as a voting bloc,
Yeah.
because when you think about it, if you just look at the number of abortions that gets done,
No,
and you don't think
yes.
about the fact that a lot of the women that are having those abortions are serial aborters.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't have one abortion. They have 3 or 4, 5. I have met one who had 6. Right.
Yeah.
But women have made being aborted the leading cause of human death in the world. That's including third world countries where starvation is still a fairly big threat, right? So, of course, they assumed that the female voting bloc would all vote against Trump because abortion. They don't think about the fact that about half or more of the female population is anti abortion. Not
Yeah.
everybody agrees that law is how it should be dealt with,
Yeah.
but there are a fair number of us that aren't going to get upset if it's outlawed because we're not going to use it, right?
Yeah.
And we think that people who do use it are wrong. So what's the point in keeping it legal? So of course, again, it's performative to them. They have convinced themselves of a certain mindset being the norm, and they're play acting that mindset. And so they assume everybody who is not part of that mindset is just play acting another mindset. So if they just play act that mindset, they can make what they want happen.
Yep. All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We're going to move on to the next story, which is probably going to be a big one. But let us know what you guys think about this one in the description or in the comment section of this video. All right. So this is the word that shook the world on April 28th, 2025. Shiloh Hendricks, a woman in Rochester, Minnesota, was recorded using the N-word against a supposedly 5-year-old, black child at a city playground, alleging the child took her son's belongings.
I need to interject at this point. She was not recorded using the N-word against the child in question.
No, she wasn't.
I went to Twitter to make a quip along the lines of, I say that word in public on a regular basis, and I'm barely scraping minimum wage.
Yeah.
By the way, nigger. But I got a response. I got a response along the lines of, "Yeah, but you didn't record yourself yelling it at a kid, did you?" And I appreciate the banter, but let's not muddy this in lies. She sure as shit did not record herself doing this. That would be, seriously egregious. She wasn't even recorded by someone else yelling that word at a kid. That would have gone viral by itself. She wasn't recording anything. She was just living in the moment with her child. It was only after she called a black child a nigger when some Somali nonce started filming her going, "Did you just call that child an N-word?"
Yes.
And at that point, she admitted to it. She confessed and doubled down on it. So yes, we can reasonably conclude that it's not just allegedly. We have her word for it, and we have the word of the Somali nonce that she used that particular slur against that particular child. But that's not what happened in the viral video.
No.
What happened in the viral video was a Somali nonce accused her of saying that bad word to a child. She admitted it, and then when challenged, she repeated that word directly in the face of the Somali nonce in question, and she gave him the finger. Some bold shit, to say the least. I wouldn't recommend anyone do this, if only for the sake of your own safety. But it needs to be clarified.
No, for sure.
That is what made this video go viral. Not that she called a child a nigger, but that she called a grown-ass Somali nonce a nigger multiple times after being explicitly dared to do so, and then she gave him the finger. If you're okay with Ilhan Omar telling a journalist to fuck off for asking a reasonable question, you ought to be okay with an American woman who is not even in office saying a word to a Somali nonce who had just dared her to say that word. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. It was it was a little bit of a mistake in the details. Admonish me if you wish, but
Admonish.
yeah, the city of Rochester issued a statement condemning the deeply disturbing event for some fucking reason. While the local DFL lawmakers and community leaders expressed outrage over the racial hostility displayed. So this is all virtue signaling because, like, in the I don't know if you guys know this, but in this country we have something called the First Amendment, where you cannot call. There's no such thing as hate speech. It's not illegal. This isn't the UK where they send the cops to your door for a tweet. This is the United States, okay? But that irrelevant to that, there are a lot of spineless cowards that have to make statements for some reason so that they don't get attacked by the cancel mob, which is really what this is all about. In response to the viral video, Hendrix launched a crowdfunding campaign, or maybe not her, because it could have been someone on her behalf. We don't really know. On a platform called Give, Send, Go, initially seeking $20,000, but raising over $600,000 at the time of this write-up. I don't know if it's close to, it could be getting up to 700,000 now. I don't know. With support from all kinds of people. We don't know. Most of the donations are anonymous. Some of the people, it made comments that were, could have been construed as racist, which I put in quotes because I don't know what that means. The campaign later increased its goal to $1 million, reflecting significant backing for Hendrix despite the controversy. The Rochester NAACP, led by President Wale Elegdebede, condemned the fundraising as abhorrent and initiated a counter fundraiser to support the child's family, aiming to match Hendrix's funds for legal support and anti-racist advocacy in the community. As an aside, one thing that's kind of interesting is that a lot of people seem to be mistakenly thinking that the child in question is in any way related to the Somali nonce that recorded the incident, of which there is no evidence of that at all. And from what we know, he's a guy hanging around a children's playground with a criminal record that it has to do with minors. But I guess we won't bother with that detail. This incident occurred amidst other regional tensions in Minnesota, including the arrest of, this is just to add to the context a little bit, Dylan Bryan Adams, a fiscal policy analyst in Governor Tim Walz's administration for vandalizing Tesla vehicles, an act some attributed to Walz's rhetoric. The overlap of these events in Minnesota suggests a broader climate of social and political division, with the Hendrix case highlighting deep-seated racial issues and the power of online platforms to amplify both support and opposition in such controversies. The significant funds raised for Hendrix underscore a troubling level of support for her actions among certain groups, according to others, while the community's pushback reflects a demand for accountability and justice, of which I don't know how they're going to get that. So I guess I'll let you guys give your thoughts. I know Hannah sent me a couple of related links to some TikTok activist guy.
That TikTok activist guy is one of the people who caused this to blow up because if I understand correctly, from everything that I've been reading the incident, and I've been reading about it, sort of backtracking through what happened, because of course I didn't hear about it till after it blew up. Just like most people that are forming opinions about it, none of us were there. None of us saw what the kid did, what happened with, was this woman's child crying and upset when she was yelling at the other kid? What was the situation? But this Tizzy Ent guy apparently was one of the individuals who promoted the story and made enough of a big deal of it that it caused this woman to be doxxed. It's the reason that she was raising money wasn't just because people were talking about her on the internet. People made violent threats against her. People released the information of, this is where she lives, this is where she works, the whole 9 yards. The same thing they do every time somebody does something politically incorrect, and the mob mentality takes over among the performative people. Oh, we have to have our 2 minutes hate, and we have to take this person down, and maybe scare the shit out of this person and potentially actually do violent things, because she said words, by the way. And yeah, I wouldn't say words like that to a child. If I was at the park with my kid when my kids were that age, and somebody did something, somebody underage did something I didn't like, I would go looking for the parents. Why is your child doing this to my child? Or I would find a different park. And if the situation was very serious, I would call the cops. But you don't berate somebody's child with nasty language. It's you're not the adult in the situation anymore when you do that. What she did wasn't something to celebrate or get excited about, but I can understand why people are supporting the fundraiser after she was attacked like that, because it wasn't something to get excited about in that direction either. It was just shitty behavior by an adult who didn't have the self-control to dumb what she was saying down to the level of the child she was telling off, when she should have, as a parent, known how to do that. But in any case, this guy turned it into something that may have been a conflict between a few people, into something huge, right? Into something unnecessarily huge. This kind of stupid conflict.
Hannah? Did we lose Hannah?
Ruh-roh, I can still hear you.
Oh,
Over
there's
topics both racial and not racial, not gendered. What's the matter?
Oh, you dropped.
It's fine. We can
dropped?
hear you now.
Okay,
Carry
okay. Well, how much did you miss?
A couple seconds.
on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing major then. But yeah, this kind of conflict, this isn't unusual. The only thing that's unusual is that it went viral this time. That someone's shitty behavior in the moment went viral this time. That her immaturity in the moment went viral this time. And that was targeted by a guy who has a history of the exact same immaturity. And in our links for this story on the Patreon, there is a link, a facebook.com link for victims of Tizzyent, and you can see somebody has compiled a video of some of his shitty behavior that is the same kind of behavior that this woman engages in. So for him to get all up in arms about her behavior is kind of hypocritical.
Yeah.
So that's why I said that's relevant. But in the meantime, we have this, the way this blew up, we have this situation where people are taking pro and anti positions regarding what she did and regarding what the person who filmed her did, and regarding this blowing up and the outrage and the behavior toward her as a result of it blowing up, when in reality, none of this should have been that big. We just had an incident in our country that people are that polarized over, involving one kid killing another kid. Like 2 17-year-olds got into a fight and one of them stabbed the other. And people racialized that, and people have been called racist for calling it a bad thing that one individual stabbed the other. Right? It has nothing to do with race. Stabbing people is bad. Nobody should do it. Right? It has nothing to do with race. Grabbing people is dumb when you don't know what kind of threat they might be. And nobody should do that either. And there's everything about the situation was wrong. And it's been racialized and polarized and lionized and demonized And this situation is the same thing. Everything about the situation is wrong. Like, where the fuck was that kid's parent? You know, whether mom or dad at the park, nobody was there. Right? Everything about the situation is wrong. You should be questioning why the situation is in your face, why you have outrage over it, why you are mad at any of the people involved, and why you have opinions about it. In both of those incidents, not taking a polarized side, not sending your money to somebody, not calling for legislative change, not cheering either somebody, calling a child a racial slur, a child that's there on his own with no parents, a racial slur, by the way, and not cheering somebody on for doxing and threatening an entire family because of a woman's immature behavior. If we did that every time a woman acted immaturely, fuck, every household that had a woman in it would be doxed and threatened. So this is all bullshit. It's time to start recognizing it as the psyop that it is. You are being manipulated. There is nothing special about this situation.
Yeah, no, having already by the earlier rant, having ridded my system of any possible defense of this rather abrasive woman, I feel I should center myself. For anyone who thinks this funding campaign represents some kind of pushback against leftist cancel culture, I need to remind you that the demographic that sits atop of this leftist pyramid scheme is women. For anyone who thinks they're fighting back against woke culture by siphoning money from white men to white women, well, good golly gosh, I might remind you that you should get thy ass to OnlyFans to do the exact same fucking thing. If Shiloh Hendricks was a man, this fundraiser would not exist. If Charlotte Hendricks was a man, the fundraiser would not even be an option. If Charlotte Hendricks was a man, he would have no choice but to get on his knees and profusely apologize for
If Shiloh Hendricks was a man, he'd be in jail for approaching a child in a public park if somebody hadn't beaten him to death for it.
And people are comparing this to the Austin Metcalf case. Need I remind you that Austin Metcalf is already dead? That's what it takes for a white man to achieve any sympathy whatsoever, never mind the kind of sympathy that earns $500,000. But he hasn't even achieved that, even in death. His killer is the one who is $500,000 better off. I really hope you'll have noticed the tone shift. I hope you can recognize that there is a tone shift between murder and the word nigger. And yes, I'm going to keep saying that word, and I'm going to keep inviting you to notice that I haven't killed anyone. So whenever you hear anyone, anywhere, in any political spectrum, making a moral equivalence between saying a rude word and senselessly murdering someone, I really hope you can eject the person who made that moral equivalence from your conscience. This is not even up for debate, folks. There is no word in any language that is even remotely as bad as murder. I don't know why I even need to clarify this. 5 years old, my ass, by the way. Never mind that this kid might not have in fact been 5 years old. Never mind that he might not be autistic. It's irrelevant. I don't care if someone leans right into the gaping maw of a black vagina yelling nigger at a stillborn black fetus. That is still not as bad as taking a human life. And fuck you to all the corners of the earth if you think it is. So yes, I understand where the romantic, chivalric white right is coming from. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that you're not doing the same shit that got us into this mess. The apocalyptic bullshit we call woke is an attack on straight white men. It always has been, specifically and explicitly. And you are categorically not going to fix it by siphoning wealth and power from straight white men to everyone else. And everyone else includes white women. Shiloh Hendricks is a white woman. And white men are making her a millionaire. Again, if
Sorry.
if she were a white man who did the same thing, she would not be on her way to be becoming a millionaire. You would all be leaving him out to dry. You look at that video, you think, oh my God, she's a skinny, vulnerable woman with a baby in her arms. She must be a victim. And yes, maybe she is. But all of this is the everlasting victim fight between white women and non-white men. Much like in the UK with the rape gangs. Do you side with the white females or the non-white males? They can't both be lying. They can't both be trying to fuck each other over, safe in the knowledge that they will come out on top of the white men no matter what happens. How dare you? This war will continue forever because it will always be subsidized by white men as they put their dilapidated heads down and go, yes, dear, some of those white men favor the white women, and some of those white men favor the non-white men. And they will fight each other for their place just above the bottom, as the white women and the non-white men fight each other for their place just below the bottom, while non-white women sit atop the throne, safely in the knowledge that they are eternal victims who can safely direct the war from a place of blameless brilliance. If you really want to push back against the woke mob, against the cancel culture of the woke mob, you know what you would do? You'd go, lol, it's a fight between a white woman and a non-white man. Let me grab a beer and some popcorn while these professional victims have a professional victim fight. This is not my bag. This is not my concern. I'm going to sit here at the bottom of the pyramid while you daft cunts kill each other. And I will rise like a phoenix from the flames and inherit the earth, like I was told would be my birthright as the meek. We are the meek. Isn't it? Well, I am the meek. I'm surrounded by highly energetic, highly hardworking people, but I am sitting here being meek, waiting for the promise that one day I will inherit the earth. It's a strategic position. I will wait until everyone else has killed each other, and then I will no longer be the meek. Then you'll see. You'll all see. Well, you won't. You'll all be dead. But whatever. Praise bounty is the zombies who will eat brains, for they will eat the brains of the zombies who eat, I don't know, niggers.
Good jube.
You know what I miss?
Oh.
I miss the early 70s and the mid 70s, like, and even in the late and 70s and early 80s, like when white kids, we would go to the park, and if there were kids there that were of minority groups, black kids, Mexican kids, kids that were from other countries, and so we would like count up teams and play football together, or tag, or basketball or baseball, but not soccer, because we all thought soccer was gay and fake.
It is gay. Well, okay.
Or monkey bar tag, which was a hell of a lot of fun.
Here's what I've been thinking about with this. Okay. I know that we don't want to believe this, but there's a lot of resentment towards white people from the blacks in this country. A lot. And a lot of people gave money to Carmelo Anthony specifically as a reward for killing a white man. That is true. Black people in this country are very, very resentful towards white people. And they have they have the strongest in-group preference of all of the ethnic groups in America for themselves. Okay. That's not like, so like this whole, like, why don't we just like kumbaya together? They have to stop hating white people. They have to stop. And they don't want to because they legitimately resent them. That's just the truth. I lived in the hood. I know. Okay, they didn't like Latinos that much, but they really don't like white people. They think that they're the cause of all of their ills, and they will do anything to essentially keep white people in a constant state of apologizing and kowtowing and redirecting resources. They act like regular women, but it's men and women of a specific demographic, and that's unfortunately due to multiple generations of a broken family and feminization and this like narrative of blame, like nothing you did is your fault, your conditions are not, it's because of the white man did that to you. And that's just what it is. And I hate it. I know guys, like black guys, that are really successful and they're still really resentful. They feel like they should be for somehow even more wealthy than they are. That's how much the resentment is. So yeah, it's a psyop, but it's a psyop that goes back like over 100 years. Okay, and that's never gonna go away until like something in those people changes and they start altering the culture. And I don't know that that's gonna happen in my lifetime. So like what's happening with this, it's not gonna change their minds. They're just gonna hate you more. Oh well. But I think that it is good not to apologize. Like you have nothing to apologize for. Nobody does. To anyone for anything that's happened in history. You just got to move on. So, but the reality is they are resentful and they will take out their revenge, and you're probably best just avoiding those people because that's just the truth of it. Okay. I mean, they take it out on each other. Like I watch that happen. It's just the truth. So anyway, there's that. And as far as the other thing is though, there is a chance that this whole thing is a scam so that she can make like $500,000 and that she colluded with this other dude and they're basically like making bank on it. I don't know for sure, but I don't leave anything out because the conditions for a woman to be in the situation, for this to go viral and for her to make that kind of money, they're just really convenient. It could just be a flash in the pan thing, but until I know more, because we haven't met the parents of the child in question. We haven't heard from her outside of like how much she's been getting from this, and all of the conversation going online, of which I did not participate in. I have no interest in donating to any of this stuff. I don't think it's going to end cancel culture. It may, maybe some people are taking a victory lap or whatever because they're finally like there's some like, let's say, desire not to apologize for being offensive, which I totally agree with. Like if somebody says, "Oh, you want the whole internet to know this?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I don't give a shit." Like that is the appropriate response. That is the appropriate response. Don't let people emotionally manipulate you or basically, engage in a struggle session with you to get you to respond in a way that they think you should be responding to, especially as a patriot of this fucking country, where we can say whatever the fuck we want and there are no laws that stop us, especially in this country. If that's what they do in Somalia, then you can go back there. But here, we have freedom of speech, okay? 100% enshrined in law, period. And anyway, so like, but there is, going back to what I was saying before, it is possible that this is a plot for her to earn money. But you know what? C'est la guerre, because like, if we didn't live in a culture that was exploitable to this degree in this way, then she wouldn't be able to make this money. But we do, so that's just what it is. If it turns out to be a scam and everything, then you know what? I respect the hustle, but I'm gonna presume that it's not, and this is just what worked out. And I get it. Like, I'm not white, but I get it. I get it that there's a lot of let's just say there's black fatigue and it's real, and I understand because I too am tired of people acting like bitches when somebody says a mean word. I'm just done. I was never down with that ever in life. Never. It never. I had friends tell me, "Well, how would you feel if somebody called you a spick?" I'd be like, "So fucking what? That doesn't mean anything to me because words only have the power that you give them, no matter what the word is." Okay? It's actions that you should be concerned with and behavior. But anyway, it is possible that this is a con. I don't know if we'll ever learn the truth, but that's all I wanted to say about that. So, there's some special chat comments that I think are kind of funny. Edwin Huddleston says, "Sounds like black people have found a space in your head, living there rent free. You live a sad existence." Yeah, I'm not sure how you got that from my statement. I grew up around black people. I dated black women. I'm not bothered by this. I'm just telling the truth.
How many more times do I have to say the word?
This is the same. I know this is the same thing. Like he said, I'm just pointing out what I'm looking at. Oh, so what you're trying to do is accuse me of bigotry in some way. Didn't you understand that I don't care? Like, this is the attitude you should have. I am free. I'm free from that. You can't affect me with your allegations. As far as I'm concerned, those things don't even exist. It's like Jesse Lee Peterson says. There's no such thing as racism, sexism. There are no isms. And I think he's right. I honestly do. I think he's 100% correct, and that you would be much freer if you just took that on and say, "You know what? Yeah, there's just right and wrong. There's just good and evil. There's nothing else. So either you're doing good or you're doing evil. So that's it. And even if you don't like it, you can just say, oh, like I wouldn't do what this woman is said to have done, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over her doing it. I'm not going to have PTSD flashbacks. It's I'm sorry, but it's time for us to move on. This is the most ridiculous. Like, the fact that this is a story is stupid, but it is our society's fault that this is stupid, that this is out here in plain view for people to talk about. So, like,
Well,
if you're affected by this
again, because we had moved on.
I don't think
And the
we
fact
did.
that we are back at this point is a targeted result of activism in universities and in the public school system. Right? This is something that there are people indoctrinated to feel the way they feel on both sides of this. And it's something that if we don't recognize that and reject it and refuse to allow it to basically decide your mindset, it'll continue forever.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. But like, I think, like I said, the resentment in the black population is real. It might come from, like Hollywood and universities and all this stuff's reinforced in the media.
Oh,
But the
yeah.
resentment is there. And like, I don't know, like the thing is, it will result in real content, like real things will happen in the world, like murder. And that's going to happen as a consequence. And I don't know what can be done except to try to like get that stuff out of there and try to tell people the truth about the world, and so that people can move on and build something and live like a satisfying life, outside of this paradigm. But I think that it's always been there under the surface. I don't think that's gone away since like before the 60s. But anyway, that's what I think. All right, let's move on to the last story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. And this one is a bit dark, but it's a small one. So, in a tragic incident in Imperatriz, northern Brazil, so we're going to go to Brazil for this one, a woman named Cordelia Pereira Barbosa was arrested for allegedly poisoning chocolate Easter eggs sent to her ex-boyfriend's new partner, Miriam Lira, on April 16, 2025, resulting in the death of Lira's 7-year-old son and a severe illness for Lira herself and her 13-year-old daughter, Evelyn Fernanda. The anonymous package delivered by courier with a note reading, "With love to Miriam Lira," contained the tainted chocolates which the family consumed, leading to immediate health complications. The young boy died the following day in the hospital, while Lira and her daughter remain in critical condition. Investigations revealed Barbosa's premeditated intent, driven by jealousy, as she had previously attempted to poison Lyra by offering candies during a chocolate tasting session at the supermarket where Lyra worked, a plan that failed. Evidence against Barbosa includes CCTV footage showing her disguised in a black wig purchasing the chocolate eggs, as well as records of her travel to the victim's city and hotel booking under a false identity. While Barbosa admitted to buying the chocolates, she denied poisoning them, though authorities believe her actions were a deliberate attempt to harm her romantic rival and her family. Women be crazy.
Yep.
So
We hear all the time about how men are violent and men are murderers and men commit all the violent crime. A lot of times when you see things that women have done of this nature, it doesn't involve one-on-one confrontation or seeking the individual out in any way in person. It involves things like sending poison by courier and the splatter effect, where she has harmed the rest of the family and not just the woman that she targeted. There are women who do that on purpose too, right? I'm going to make you miserable by killing your child. And they'll think of that as no worse than getting into a fight. And people think of women as innocent and pure and nurturing and kind and all these things. They don't think of the other side of the feminine, the toxic side of the feminine, jealousy, rage, and envy, and that this can rise to the level of murderous rage and can rise to the level of not even caring who you hurt in the process. And it did in this case, and a child is dead. A little boy is dead. Right? And this is something that it won't get the level of attention that it would get if, say, the genders were reversed and the jealous man went to her house and fired into the windows, or went to his rival's house and fired into the windows and accidentally hit the rival's daughter. Then it would blow up and everybody would be talking about how all men are like this and this is just male violence and so on. Both sexes do it. Violence isn't gendered. Sometimes the methods are gendered, but the behavior itself, it exists in both sexes. And the main difference between when a woman does it and when a man does it is that when a woman does it, it doesn't get wrongly gendered or generalized to all women. When a man does it, it does get wrongly generalized to all men.
Mm-hmm. Mike?
Wait, what? Why are you asking me?
Oh, I don't know if you want to say anything about the about.
I don't know. Fuck about shit. Leave me alone.
Okay, I'll leave you alone. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, this is like just a really simple one. Like, yes, women can do shit like this. I wonder if she was dressed up like, I just imagined her as like an old hag, like Snow White kind of a witch. Instead of like a poison apple, though, it's like a chocolate egg. And I wonder, did she think that she was just doing this to her rival and not her rival's kids?
Like you send candy to a household with kids, you have to understand kids are going to get some of it.
What the fuck? Okay.
But if she was an entirely selfish person and she received candy and she had kids, would she share it? So if she would not, then maybe, she might not.
She is a sharing parent. She did share them with the kids.
No, I mean the poisoner.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah,
like
right.
If she
would she assume
if she's a narcissist, would she share chocolate with children that she received, or would she eat it all herself?
Yeah, good point.
So she might not have expected the other woman to share it either.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, anyway, so I think that's basically all the stories that we have. So we're gonna basically go into the patron show now. We're gonna look at this article called "Now Comes the Womanosphere: The Anti-Feminist Media Telling Women to Be Thin, Fertile, and Republican." We're gonna get a little bit more into that. Yeah, I know, it's kind of wild, isn't it?
So after menopause, women can't be part of the womanosphere anymore because we're not thin and we're no longer fertile.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, if you want to join us for that, go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe to become a member and hang out on our Discord server where you can participate in all of the additional content, including patron shows and other things. I think there might be a game night tonight or something like that. So please consider
Cards
being a
Against
part of
Humanity.
that. Cards Against Humanity. That could be fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, hopefully we will see you guys there. And thanks for coming on the stream, especially those of you guys who are watching on the mobile version, because I know that it's asking a lot for you guys to stick around for that. But with all that said, we're going to get out of here now. So if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you guys in the next one.
Men's right activists are machines, dude, okay?
I meant to say, see you next Tuesday.
Men's right activists are machines, dude, okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.